Hi, I'm your Wegener and welcome back to the Little Bit Photo News. We have a bunch of hot topics to talk about today. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for the plentiful comments on my last video congratulating me on my channel reaching 100,000 followers. It's been a wild journey and wouldn't have been possible without all of you. So big thanks from my side to all of you guys watching. And what makes me happy the most is to see that even a small comment from my part can make a big difference in someone else's life. This is something that I take quite seriously, and hopefully I will be able to help as many of you guys as possible. Of course, it takes a lot of time to answer all these emails and comments, but I think it's a big part of being a creator. It seems like I may have stuffed up some sound settings in my last few videos clipping certain areas. I've made some tweaks now and hopefully that's all fixed, so please let me know in the comments if the sound sounds good in this video. Let's talk about the hot topic of the last couple of weeks. Are there any autofocusing issues with the latest firmware 1.0.3 and the R5 Mark II? There's been an article on Canon rumors and a couple of videos on YouTube saying that with the latest firmware, the autofocus is noticeably more sluggish and can't find the subject as well. The only thing that's not clear for me from watching these videos is whether this affects photo and video focus or just the video autofocus, because all the examples provided were only video autofocus examples. If you've updated your R5 Mark II to the latest firmware 1.0.3, have you experienced any issues? Is it more sluggish? Has it trouble finding the subject? Or is it all fine? And if you had any issues, is this in photo autofocus or video autofocus? I asked a few of my friends who recently updated their R5 Mark II bodies and then used them extensively in the field, and none of them had any major issues. That's not to say that there isn't a problem, but it seems like it may only affect certain cameras or certain camera and lens combinations in certain shooting situations. I must admit that over the last few weeks, I've been mainly using my R1 and kind of neglected my two R5 Mark II bodies, and so they're not on the latest firmware version just yet, and I'm thinking I might have to hold off to update until there's a clear solution to this issue. In saying all that, the Canon R5 Mark II's autofocus, regardless of which firmware version it's on, can definitely have a mind of its own sometimes. Over the 10 months I've been using that camera now, I definitely had my struggles from time to time. For instance, when I was filming cast series with a 100 to 500mm lens, whenever I zoomed out a bit more, the video autofocus had the tendency to instantly jump onto the background and then not find my target again until I manually interfered, which actually sounds kind of similar to the problem that was described in the YouTube videos, even though my issue happened on firmware 1.0. Besides the video autofocus sometimes struggling, I also had to tweak the stills autofocus a fair bit to find the best combination. I've had the most success when I set the camera to auto and +1. If you haven't tried that yet, I think I'd give it a go. It may dramatically improve your autofocusing experience. I've made a few videos recently that you should check out after watching this one, where I share a few autofocusing settings and field techniques that will dramatically improve the performance of your autofocus, and I wanted to share the most important ones with you today as well. And the first one is to remember that autofocus always works better forwards. So from the minimum focusing distance, or you as the photographer, towards infinity. Where all mirrorless cameras struggle dramatically is if you focus past your subject and then have to bring the focus back onto your subject. That almost never works unless you manually interfere either with the manual focusing, for instance, or using the spot focus and focusing to something closer to you and then back onto your subject. Pre-focusing is another important factor if you want to improve your autofocusing results. The aim here is to have the subject as much in focus as possible when it shows up in our viewfinder. What rarely works is if your camera is completely defocused and then you try to make it find your subject. The more your subject is already in focus, the better your results will be. And here's another feature that I turn off on all cameras. On Canon, it's called, for instance, retract lens on power off. And this feature causes the camera to completely lose focus and defocus every time it goes to sleep or you turn the camera off. So by turning this setting off, your camera will remember the last focusing position, and when it comes back from sleep or you turn it back on, it will straight be focused back onto your perch, for instance. And here's another tip for all of you struggling with the video autofocus sometimes not finding your subject or it being too slow. In most situations, I find that using the photo autofocus to quickly focus on my subject and then changing over to video mode gives me much better results than trying to use the video autofocus to find the subject on its own. So regardless of what firmware version you're on, these tips will definitely help you to dramatically increase the keeper rate and your autofocusing results. The main takeaway from this whole situation is probably that it's never wise to update your camera to the latest firmware the moment it comes out. It's usually better to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks unless you're having an issue with your current firmware that should be solved by the latest firmware. This week I borrowed Canon's probably best telephoto lens. Let me get it. Not the lightest. The Canon RF 100 to 300mm to use it on my R1 because over the last few weeks I've been trying to photograph these glossy black cockatoos coming in for a drink in very low light situations. And the only lens that I had available so far was my RF 100 to 500mm lens, but that lens is somewhat slow and struggled with the autofocusing performance in this low light, and I had to use very high ISO, which resulted in quite noisy files. I was still able to edit them with my Masterclass workflow, but it was definitely a bit of a struggle. So my hope was that this combination would perform much better because I should be able to shoot at much lower ISOs and still have much faster shutter speeds available. Every time I grab the 100 to 300, I'm first surprised how heavy the lens actually is. But then when I use it, I'm always shocked how good the performance is. And this is clearly Canon's best super telephoto lens in my opinion. The image stabilization is second to none. It's super stable and even handheld video can be done with ease with hardly any shake. And the autofocusing performance, especially on the R1, is also super fast and snappy. So if this is an outlook into what Canon might be capable to do with other super telephoto lenses, I'm definitely excited. The biggest challenge of shooting fast action in low light is that you need enough shutter speed to actually freeze that action. In my case, I want at least a 2500th of a second, or I noticed that either the wings or parts of the body may still be blurred. And on the 100 to 500, it's definitely a challenge to get to that shutter speed because I usually shoot around that sort of 300mm mark, and that lens is then at f5.6. But to get to a 2500th of a second at sunset, I usually have to use ISO 25600 and also underexpose my images a little bit, which results in images that are quite dark and not easy to edit, especially because the birds are quite dark as well. On the 100 to 300, on the other hand, I can shoot anywhere between f2.8 and f3.5, use ISO 6400 instead of 25600, and that results in me getting much cleaner RAW files that I can also expose much brighter. The autofocus on the 100 to 300 is also better than the 100 to 500, has given me consistently more keepers. The last few weeks I've been able to get a few shots of the males, but I failed to get a nice shot of the female that has the beautiful yellow head and that fiery tail. And the other day with the R1 and the 100 to 300, I was finally able to nail the shot that I was after. Editing these files has also been much easier because I had to do less noise reduction and the files are already nice and bright, so I just had to make a few tweaks to get a beautiful final result. Whereas on the male that I photographed a few weeks ago at very high ISO levels, the editing process was a lot more difficult and I had to throw all my knowledge at it to be able to get all the fine details out of the black feathers. In the end, I got great results from both files and they look quite similar, but one was significantly easier to edit than the other because I was able to shoot it at lower ISOs and have a much better base exposure. And if you want to learn an easy to follow workflow that you can apply to all your RAW files, even the very difficult ones, and get great results with these, I would highly recommend that you check out my Lightroom and Next Generation Photoshop Masterclasses. I've developed my Masterclasses to teach you step by step and in easy to follow chapters all the important tools and techniques that will make your editing process so much easier and give you great confidence when editing your own RAW files. No more frustrating moments in front of the computer or pulling random sliders. You will know exactly what to do and have an easy to follow workflow that will guide you through the editing process every time. And of course, you won't just be watching because I'm also providing you with my own RAW files you can edit right alongside me while watching the class. And if you're not sure if my classes are worth it or the right fit for you, check out some of the amazing reviews I receive on a daily basis from many happy students who I've helped to transform their editing lives and who now get great results and actually love editing their own images. And if you'd like to have a little sneak peek into my editing style, check out the Lightroom video that I posted a couple of weeks ago. This week, we've also seen the end of an era for Nikon because they officially discontinued their last flagship DSLR camera, the D6. The D6 was never as popular as its predecessor, the D5, and the two cameras were kind of similar, but at the time when it was released, it was still kind of state of the art. And this also shows us how quickly the camera market has transformed because the D6 was only released in June 2020, so less than 5 years ago, and that technology has basically become now obsolete, with mirrorless cameras completely taking over the market and dominating with much higher frame rates and much improved autofocusing. Speaking of Nikon, would you guys like to see me review cameras like the Z52 or the Z5 Mark II? Let me know in the comments and I might try to get my hands on them. Nikon Rumors also posted a very interesting photo this week of a Nikon Coolpix camera that was stuck in the dirt for 7 years, yet the photos on the memory card still survive. Pretty cool. The camera itself, it's probably dead, I assume, but it's nice to see that photos on a memory card can survive a very long time. Last week, Canon also released a low-end 75 to 300mm lens, which is in itself not that interesting, but what is interesting about the release is that Canon actually hasn't officially released the lens in the US market. They released it everywhere else, but not in the US. So I wonder if that might be a trend going forward where gear is released everywhere else in the world and then only later in the US market once the whole tariff situation might be worked out. So definitely an interesting topic to follow. It looks like Sigma will be starting shipping their 300 to 600mm f4 zoom lens quite soon as well, which B&H saying it might start shipping on the 16th of May. So all of you who've pre-ordered the lens may be getting their hands on it very soon. And I'd definitely love to hear from you guys in the comments once you've got it. How does it perform in the field? The reviews I've seen about it so far are quite good, but also mixed when it comes to the autofocusing performance, and in particular the inability of the lens to focus while zooming in or out, which definitely seems to be one of the major downsides. A few weeks ago now, DXO also released Pure RAW 5. I was wondering what your experiences have been with the program if you downloaded the trial or maybe bought the full version. For me personally, I feel like there's a few workflow improvements, like you can use different sliders and you have the masking, but overall the noise reduction results in itself are very similar to DXO Pure RAW 4. Would you guys agree? So the main reason for me to update would really be to get the latest camera support, especially if new cameras will be coming out over the next few months, and also if I want to have features like the masking. Otherwise, I think you're also still very well off if you're using DXO Pure RAW 4 or maybe just Adobe Enhance, which also does a quite good job. So let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on the noise reduction and your go-to software at the moment. And lastly, I wanted to share a funny Instagram story with you that I saw the other day because it seemed like someone was in a hide watching a group of photographers taking pictures. So you let me know in the comments, do you think that's a new trend developing where people rent out a hide to actually watch photographers taking pictures? Let me know in those comments. Also share all your other thoughts. Give me a thumbs up for the video. Check out my channel membership and my masterclasses. And of course, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you guys in another video very soon. Bye.